Susan Wolfe, in her article Moral Saints, raises an interesting question. Is it necessarily the case that being moral is the best thing a human being can do? Now, certainly Aristotle seems to suggest that excellence in being human is having excellent habits, and that those excellent habits constitute morality. But more contemporary theories of ethics, as we've seen, Kantian ethics and utilitarian ethics, and if you haven't seen them, go watch them. They're there. Aren't interested in a full human being package. They're interested in their particular issues. Do we behave in a way that's logically consistent so that the whole world can do it? And if so, then what elements are there to normal human life? She talks about reading Victorian novels. What did that have to do with being logically consistent and dictating the whole world? You're both subject and sovereign in the kingdom of ends. How do those go together? Also, let's take a look at the utilitarian point of view. The utilitarian wants us always to be causing the most pleasure we can possibly cause. But really, again, Victorian novels, they're doing lots of pleasure for me, but surely I could be causing more pleasure in the world by going out feeding the starving, or even planting a garden so that the bees are happier. That's better than sitting and reading a novel. Do we really want to say that moral sainthood, moral perfection, is the goal of human existence? She proposes it isn't. That there is far more richness that needs to be part of human life than just being moral. She emphasizes that she's not interested in saying don't be moral, not even interested in saying don't be as moral as you can be, but just a suggestion that there is something more to being human than merely being moral, and that while we should not be immoral in order to pursue these greater goods, it need not be that morality is the only value we pursue. A moment then on value theory. There are all kinds of values in the world. There's aesthetic value and truth value and economic value, political value, social value. These are all valuable precisely because they enrich our humanity, make our lives better. They are something we want in order to make life a better place. And if there's going to be times that the one gets in the way of the other, you can't appeal to one of them to settle the issue as to which should be pursued. In other words, it's moral value is one thing. Economic value is another thing. I economically value something. Does that mean I can set my morals aside to get it? No. Well, okay, why not? Something is morally valuable. Must I give up economic value to pursue it? If so, why? What makes morality a more important value than the other values? Wolfe says simply all we can appeal to from one point to another is intuition. We need to feel our way forward. And she's not talking about traditional intuitionism, that notion that, well, we just know the right thing to do if we just listen to our inner voice. That's not her point at all. What she's just trying to say is there aren't any clear, hard and fast rules about which do I listen to when. And she suggests that there never will be, referring to G.E. Moore. She says that some open questions will always be part of the system. And if that's so, then we can't have what should we call it? Well, she talks about it as as a meta-ethics, but not in the traditional sense of the word meta-ethics, where I'm studying the higher issues of ethics, but rather that ethics has to fit into the other parts of our life in order to produce a more human life. And there is no clear way of knowing which is the one I should value now. So we should listen to our own self, hear what our own inner voice has to say, and go forward without really worrying about moral sainthood. Robert Adams wants to take exception to some of what Susan Wolfe has said. Most important element is that Adams thinks that this whole concept of moral saints is inadequate. That a moral saint is first a saint and then moral. What do I mean by that? That a little history, okay? We're familiar with people being called saints. St. Peter, St. Augustine, just two saints off the top of my head here in Florida, where the cities are named for. And there's the St. John's River and Santa Lucia and, saints. These are persons who are revered for their religious commitment. They are not necessarily model human beings. At least that's Adams's take on things. It is the particular kind of commitment that they make. In one regard, Adams agrees with Wolfe. We're not all cut out to be moral saints. We all aren't capable. But those who could, should, he suggests. And that while it's not a goal for all of us, it should at least serve as a model. Now, some of his examples of moral sainthood are questionable in terms of being the kind of committed person that he seems to think they were. But I'll accept them for conversation's sake. That it is possible to be so committed to a religious program that you're saintly. And that it is possible, as a result of that commitment to your religious program, that you will act in at what you view as, from your religious tradition or your philosophical tradition or whatever, in a maximally moral way. What Adams wants to suggest is that there still is a compatibility between excellence in other fields and excellence in morality. Maybe not a perfect compatibility. Maybe true moral sainthood is beyond, as he says, it's hard to have the same level of commitment to serving others and being a concert violinist. Each seems to be an all-consuming activity, so that all you can do is sort of wave at one or the other. Now, he points out, I think, and I know, the thing comes to my mind the minute he suggests it, is Albert Schweitzer, the world-class Bach organist who became a doctor and served as a missionary in sub-Saharan Africa. Pretty damn excellent. Oh, and an excellent scholar in historical Jesus studies as well. Outstanding. Certainly, I think the kind of person that is rare, according to Adams, but worth taking as a model. Realizing that maybe you won't succeed the way they succeeded, but why not try like them? His more obvious example that he gives is Van Gogh. Van Gogh tried to work as a missionary, as a preacher to the miners and other persons of a poor status in society. He always maintained a large level of religious admiration in his life and in his action. And he seemed to be a very good person, always giving what he had to whoever needed it more than he did. And quite often, he needed it more than they did, and he still gave it to them. And he's a great painter. At least most people think so. I think so. I'm a big fan. But he's then a model, someone to emulate, but not necessarily a goal, something you want to get to. In the end, though, both agree most of the trip. They both agree that pure morality will not make for a truly valuable life. They agree that the meaning of ethics' role, morality's role in helping us shape our activities has to come from some extra moral source. I mean, it has to. You can't appeal to the thing you're trying to justify, justifying it with the thing you want to justify. You have to have something else to justify the thing you want to justify. Wolfe appeals to a basic intuition of how we live, how it's the right thing to do. We have some vision of what kind of human being we want to be, and we try to live accordingly. That life has a place for morality in it, and we shouldn't permit morality to disappear simply because we're trying to be a great violinist or we're trying to become the best mathematician in the world. We're still called to be moral. We just perhaps aren't going to be perfectly moral. The next place where their basic accord is that in pursuing morality, we need to make it part of our everyday life. They even agree it needn't be the most important thing in our life. In fact, this is the core of the whole discussion with Adams. Adams wants to contend that mere intuition is not enough. And indeed, many of us have a notion that mere intuition is not enough, that somehow there needs to be some external justification for whatever my internal values are. Adams suggests this could be found in religion, that with a commitment to a religious system, an understanding of the universe in terms of a divine plan or at least a commitment to a divine leadership, then our life has meaning and morality can play a role within it. Wolfe wants to suggest that we don't have to go there, that where we can go instead is to some notion of humanity that we can all share to some extent or another, but that ultimately is justified by our own internal satisfaction. If you've looked at the William James moral philosopher and the moral life, I mean, he suggests that there's some internal sense of morality. You can't base your whole moral life on it, but if you don't appeal to it, then you're not going to accept any moral principle that doesn't appeal to it. It has to be an internal-external kind of relationship. Not in this article, but apparently later, Wolfe goes back to Aristotle, which I mentioned a little earlier in the discussion of Wolfe, that by going back to Aristotle and looking at some notion of what it is to be the best you can be in an Aristotelian sense, then she offers one more way of grounding ourselves in this world, and yet not trying to make us into moral saints, wholly devoted to morality. The two views, I think, are more complementary than not. The big difference is in the commitment to a divine plan, leader, goal. Are we going to look to God for our meaning, or are we going to look to our place in the world for our meaning? But other than that, while I think it's honest to say that Adams has a better notion that morality and sainthood are compatible than Wolfe does. I don't think either wants to say that we all should try to be moral saints. Rather, the one thinks it's a worthwhile model to accept, Adams, and the other thinks it's an utter waste of time and a mistake in being truly human. And that's Wolfe's point of view. Lots to think about, lots to talk about. Keep on talking philosophy.